Roki Sasaki's Cactus League debut was not perfect, but it did make us say holy crap a few times. Can't ask for much more than that. Let's talk about it live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Tuesday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Make it really easy on yourself to find it. Just subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio. That guy next to me is not Vince Samperio. That is my abnormal co-host, Clint Pasillas. Vince and Clint and I are all lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also all spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And Clint, I am excited, as always, to be talking with you, especially on this special day, which is Roki Sasaki's Cactus League debut. Yoshinobu Yamamoto pitched the first 4 innings. Sasaki followed up with 3 innings of his own. The future of Dodgers pitching right there, and those two guys, along with their fellow countryman Shohei Ohtani, who will start pitching later this year. Japanese baseball is alive and well in Los Angeles. And like I said in the intro, Roki Sasaki wasn't perfect, but he did throw 3 scoreless innings and make our eyes pop out of our heads a few times.
Yeah, I mean, considering it's the kid's debut, and when I say kid, this is but a mere baby child at what, 22, 23, whatever it is. He is young, but he was dominant. Looks like he got past those nerves after the first few pitches, and then he just kind of let it eat, regularly touching 98, 99 with the fastball. The splitter looked disgusting. All of the people that go and look at Stuff Plus and all of the metrics or whatever are drooling over what this kid threw tonight, and I feel now laying eyes on him in an A game against, whatever. It's the Reds, still a Major League Baseball team, but I feel a whole lot better. Not that I felt bad about Roki Sasaki at any point, but I feel a whole lot better about this team and the outlook for that starting rotation and just how dominant this team could be, like we all expected when they went and got everybody this offseason.
Yeah, we're going to dig into that rotation specifically in the second segment, but with Roki specifically, in his debut, we don't necessarily expect him to be fully polished. We knew when the Dodgers signed him, part of his whole homework assignment that he gave to teams was help me figure out how to be better. Help me to figure out what was wrong with me last year. And so we knew that he was going to be a work in progress. He's still going to be a work in progress. He hung some pitches. There was one pitch that he was lucky that it wasn't hit out. The ball drifted foul, but it was hit. I believe the exact measurement was 7,000 feet, but luckily it was foul. And then that guy later in the at-bat looked ridiculous striking out. I mean, it was the entire Roki experience in the span of 3 pitches or whatever. But for a debut, as Dodger fans, if the Dodgers don't make it to the postseason, something went crazy wrong. So we're not necessarily thinking we need Roki to be awesome right off the bat. We're thinking what progress he's going to make in the next 6 months, 6.5 months, so that when October gets here, he is ready to be one of those 4 dominant starters. I think for me as a fan, my hope is that the Dodgers have the hardest decision ever to make because they have a healthy Glasnow, a healthy Snell, a healthy Ohtani, a healthy Yamamoto, a healthy Sasaki, a healthy Dustin May, healthy Tony Gonsolin, healthy Clayton Kershaw. Give us 8 options and make it really hard decisions. And then if you plan for, and we didn't even mention Bobby Miller, maybe Emmett Sheehan will probably be back later in the year, I think. All these potential options. And if they have injuries like last year, you and I have talked
when they have injuries.
Andrew Friedman's goal this offseason was to never have a bullpen game in the postseason ever again. And that's why they've built this pitching depth. And so with Sasaki specifically, like we said, knowing that that's what we need from him, we don't really need it until 6 months from now. Everything until then is just a progression. Like, I almost feel better about how tonight went than I would if he had just come in and struck out everybody, because it's only downhill from there, you know?
It's fair. Yeah, I think he showed enough. I like I mentioned at the top there, I like seeing some of the nerves as well, because, you know, he was the second most talked about, you know, free agent this offseason behind Juan Soto. Maybe you could argue even more talked about. So everybody had eyes on this start. Sold out Camelback Ranch, and to know that, again, it was just the Reds, and it's ultimately a meaningless game, but it meant a whole lot to Sasaki, meant a lot to us, it meant a lot to this team to be able to get eyes on him and know that he has the dominant stuff. And like you mentioned, there's room to improve. There's room to get better over the next, 5, 6, 7 months with this dude and with everybody in that starting rotation. And it just makes the team that much better, knowing of all of those arms that you mentioned, the starting pitching options, 8, who knows who else comes up. Jackson Ferris is a minor leaguer who's looked very good so far this spring. River Ryan is saying he's trying to make a comeback by the end of the season. There's just a bounty of pitches to borrow from my buddy Doug McCain. They are in a very, very good spot when it comes to the starting rotation. And, bullpen right now, we entered spring training expecting, and I know we're going to talk bullpen a little bit later in the show, but bullpen, when we entered spring training, it's like, oh man, this is going to be a massive strength. And then we just keep hearing about all these dudes just keep dropping like flies. There's more injuries, including another one today with Edgardo Henriquez, which we'll talk about in a second. So having all those starters, knowing that maybe they could plug into the bullpen, everybody but Clayton Kershaw for the people and the sake of the people in the chat, Dodgers a very, very good spot here to not have to buy at the deadline.
Yeah, and I know I promised you, if you promised to turn your hat around to class up this joint, I would not throw any math at you. But it is March 4th, which means that the Dodgers' last Cactus League game is a week from now, March 11th. And then their season opener against the Cubs in Japan is a week after that, March 18th. And
coming on fast.
What we know is that Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki are both on the roughly once a week schedule, which means probably we see something similar to this. Maybe another piggyback between these two guys, maybe an A game and B game thing, but probably both of these guys pitching again next Tuesday for the last game before they head to Japan. And then that lines up to be ready for Yamamoto to start game 1 against the Cubs and Roki to start game 2. And I didn't see anything in this game that made me think maybe it's a bad idea to start Roki in game 2, especially the Dodgers early in the season. They don't have to chase every win. Obviously, I hope they go 162-0 this year. They don't need to chase every win. It's okay to play to the pageantry a little bit. So I'd be in favor of Roki starting game 2, even if he had looked terrible tonight. The fact that he didn't just strengthens that.
I love the idea as well. I think it's good for baseball. It's good for the growth of the game. It's good for Roki to kind of get his feet wet properly back home in Japan, where, like you said, if Dodgers lose that game, which he's still going to give them a fighting chance, and if he has to get pulled early, let's not forget game 2 last year, Yoshinobu Yamamoto made it through 1 inning. We can't endure, we can't survive, but it would be good for everybody to see Roki and Yama get starts out there, or definitely at the bare minimum appear in those games. But the way things are lining up, like you said, you look at that calendar, use a little bit of that evil math stuff. Things are really trending in the right direction to get those guys 1 and 2 in Tokyo in 14 days ish. There, yep. I tried to do math.
Yeah. 18 minus 4 is 14. You got that.
Let's go.
The time zones do make that a little bit trickier, but yeah, it's more like 13 and a half days. But that's what we're looking at, and what that means. If Yamamoto and Roki start those 2 games against Cubs, that means there are going to be some highly touted and highly paid Dodgers pitchers who will not be starting those 2 games in Japan. We're going to dig into this rotation when we come back and talk a little bit about just the outlook for this rotation over the next 7.5 months until they complete their quest to become back-to-back World Series champions. A lot of rotation talk coming up. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love that you can choose no shells or in shell because every situation is different. When I'm sitting at my desk and want a quick snack, the no shells variety is perfect. If I'm watching my son play baseball out in the fresh air, sometimes it's nice to crack my own shells, so the in-shell options make me happy. Or in the case of me this week, I will be watching my son playing baseball in Arizona next week. Absolutely going to have some shelled Wonderful Pistachios, but I'm going to be driving all day tomorrow. I'm going to want the no shells for that because who wants shells all over the floor of their car? What are we? Animals, you know? So Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. No shells Wonderful Pistachios is great for that grab and go ease, and there's not much better than the satisfying crack of opening each shell in the in-shell variety. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. We are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, or if you're live with us, for your last listen maybe tonight. We appreciate that. We know you have, what do the airlines say? We know you have a lot of options when you want to talk Dodgers, and we appreciate you choosing Locked On Dodgers. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. For your second listen, maybe check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, and check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. So this starting rotation, Clint, you know, we've talked about it earlier this episode. We've talked about it a lot over the last couple months. The Dodgers last year, their starting pitching was good. They had the quality, but not the quantity.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and when you get to the postseason, Tyler Glasnow was hurt. Clayton Kershaw was hurt. Gavin Stone was hurt. Obviously, Dustin May's comeback didn't work out like it was supposed to. Tony Gonsolin was maybe going to come back. He didn't get back. And they ended up throwing, four bullpen games in 3 postseason series and it worked out okay. They won the World Series. Doesn't mean it was fun. Doesn't mean they ever want to try that formula again.
Yeah.
So in addition this year to getting Tyler Glasnow healthy, getting Shohei Ohtani back on the mound, getting Dustin May back, getting Tony Gonsolin back, they also went out and said, let's sign Blake Snell, the best free agent pitcher on the market. Yes, the best. Let's sign Roki Sasaki, the guy every team wants. And, it was touch and go there when he put on a Padres jersey that they gave him. But turns out he wants to win and get better. So he came to the Dodgers. Like, this approach is very, very clearly, we never want to have a quantity problem again.
Yeah, you've now twice poo-pooed on the bullpen games, and rightfully so. But for my sake, I'm going to argue that, well, one, yeah, you never want to do that again. But I think that bullpen game, particularly Game 4 of the NLDS, the Dodgers needed that game to be able to kind of just absolutely slam the door on the Padres. I think if that game doesn't happen in that way, I don't feel like they win the World Series. I think there was just something about really hammering home the bullpen dogs and all of this thing and all the dumb things that happen with baseball, where if you feel good or you feel some sort of aura or vibe and you could just ride that out, I think that really helped them out. This is just me spitballing here, being a ball knower and seeing sometimes those kind of dumb things help you out. If Derek Jeter can wear ladies' underwear or whatever it was, a bullpen game could help a Dodgers team win a World Series. But yeah, quantity, knock on desk, should not be an issue for this team this year, because if you don't have Shohei or Yamamoto or Roki or Glasnow, Snell, Gonsolin, Dustin May at the end of the season, you're still going to have Clayton Kershaw. You're still going to have an Emmett Sheehan coming back. Mentioned earlier, Jackson Ferris, Nick Frasso is another guy who could be an option to start some games for this team. The Bobby Miller still exists and is alive, despite taking a 106-mile-an-hour comebacker off
He's
the
tougher
head.
than either of us. I know
Yeah,
that.
definitely. I mean, this is a team that just has a bounty of options, and some of them are going to end up in the bullpen. Some of them are going to not make the roster, and it's going to be very, very difficult conversations. But it's a lot better than, hey, dude, like, is your arm going to stay on if you go out there? Or Brent Honeywell needing to go out there and say, like, I don't give an F. I'll pitch until my arm falls off for this team. Which again, vibes, all that kind of stuff, but it's not a good way to live over the course of the already stressful month of October. So knowing you have all these bodies, and if at least half of them are good to go, you're going to be in a much better spot than you were last year.
Yeah, and you think about when Tony Gonsolin went down with his Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago, we found out he had been pitching hurt for a few months because they needed him to. The Dodgers should be in a position where nobody needs to pitch hurt. And so if something's sore, take a month off, and let's hope that they all take their month off, and the month of October is the month that they don't need time off. Or at least 4 of the good options don't need time off in October. But having this many options available does make it really, really likely that they won't have to push these guys. They won't have to say, you know what, I know you're hurting. I think Gavin Stone was pitching hurt a little bit too. Yep. They shouldn't have to do that this year. And that's maybe the thing that's most exciting for me as a fan is that, yes, it's going to hurt. It's going to be sad when in mid-May they say, oh, Tyler Glasnow's going on the IL. Who pick a name out of a hat? Probably all of them are going to go on the IL at some point during the year. But I would much rather have a guy take 3 weeks off for a minor issue.
Yes.
And so that he can be healthy and strong in October than to have to take 3 months off with the major issue like Tyler Glasnow did at the end of the season. It wasn't 3 months, but I don't know when he started throwing, but he took off the rest of the season because they needed him before then. I think we're going to see some of that NBA style load management kind of stuff with getting guys onto the IL, not the phantom IL. Phantom IL means making up injuries. This is the injuries that every pitcher has, things where all you need is a doctor to say, health-wise, you would definitely benefit from taking 15 days off. And boom.
And nursing those nagging injuries, that goes a long way for these teams. We kind of scoffed at Tyler Glasnow and his back issue around the All-Star break last year. Maybe there was something there, and maybe that was something that him trying to pitch through it and feeling like, oh, whatever, I don't need to take time off. Maybe that's something that led to that forearm kind of barking at him towards the end of the season and costing him a postseason run. But having more starting pitchers. I mean, we look in recent history, particularly with the World Series, how many closers are shutting down the game for these teams. It's a starter. It's Walker Buehler. It's a Charlie Morton, which is one of the first ones that comes to my mind. Unfortunately, it's a Chris Sale. You really remember the ones that do it to the Dodgers, but you need to have these guys available for any sort of role. And if it's an Emmett Sheehan picking up Julio Urias for the Dodgers in 20, somebody picking up 2 innings, 3 innings, or maybe even saving some bullets for the starters and having, like we saw today, 4 from Yama, 3 from Roki, and then you get your 2 best bullpen arms that are available and let them go out there, let it eat, and kind of keep your bullpen arms fresh as well. The Dodgers would be a lot better off if they had, they could carry 15 pitchers instead of wasting a spot on a CT3 or whoever else is going to end up taking those last spots. But I think they're going to be very creative with one of their favorite terms, the optionality and the arms they have, particularly with starting and relieving and bullpen. And everybody's just going to have to buy in because it worked for them last year. You got to get the buy-in again from them this year. Absolutely.
One of those areas, in addition to starting pitching, the relievers are going to have that same shuttle on and off the injured list. And we're already starting to see that. We're going to come back in just a second. We're going to talk about, the growing number of, you're going to be surprised at the number of Dodgers pitchers who are going to start the season on the injured list. We'll talk about that and what that means for the bullpen, including the latest injury to Edgardo Henriquez. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. Hey, that was quick. Here we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks for being here with us live here on Tuesday evening. We appreciate that. As always, I appreciate my buddy Clint Pasillas for joining me. Vince is at the LAFC game tonight, and since Vince will be, I won't be available tomorrow because I will be driving to Arizona. So I figured I'll let Vince have the night off tonight. And so when Vince has a night off, I like to call my buddy Clint because I like talking Dodgers with Clint. If you like hearing Clint talk Dodgers, be sure to check out All Dodgers with Clint Pasillas and Dodgers Territory with Clint and Alana Rizzo. And of course, with all your Locked On Dodgers stuff, you want to be a Locked On Dodgers insider, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. And let's talk about the bullpen, Clint. Edgardo Henriquez, we got word earlier today that he was in a walking boot, and Dave Roberts before the game described it as a metatarsal injury, which is only slightly more specific than saying his foot hurts.
Yeah,
a tiny bit more specific. Metatarsals make up most of the foot. Injury is very generic.
He's a bone ouchie.
He has an ouchie.
Tiny bone ouchies.
We found out after the game that Dave Roberts did get a little more specific in not what the injury is, but how it happened. He said that he had an incident. Is that the word he used?
Yeah, it was off the field mishap. The quotes there, the air quotes the quotes there come from Fabian Ardaya on the mishap. But the big one there, Henrique is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks with this injury while his foot has to heal. And like you said before, throwing to the break, that's just another now name added to the growing list of pitching injuries this team is dealing with here with a couple weeks until opening day.
Yeah, and we were counting before we went live, and I think we came to a total of 10 Dodgers pitchers currently on the 40-man roster who will start the season on the injured list. Obviously, some of those are starters like Clayton Kershaw, Gavin Stone,
Emmett Sheehan. Stone will be on there, yeah.
But then you've got a handful of relievers, including some of the guys who were locks, like Michael Kopech and Evan Phillips. Then you have Michael Grove and Edgardo Henriquez, both going to be vying for some of those bullpen innings. What that means, though, is we know the Dodgers are going to run an 8-man bullpen, probably a bigger bullpen than that, probably 9 or 10 men for the 2 games in Japan, depending on how many position players they decide to bring, since they only need 2 starters for those games. But when we're talking domestic opening day, going to be an 8-man bullpen, there's only 5 locks left. We got Anthony Bonda, Tanner Scott, Blake Trinan, Alex Vesia, Kirby Yates.
Yeah.
Those are our 5 locks, which means we have a very good possibility that our buddy Ben Casparius, we talked last week about his stuff looking so much better, just really, really impressive stuff. Casparius, with these injuries, feels to me like he's a lock to make the bullpen at this point.
Yeah, I mean, luckily the stuff has also looked better, even if the ERA isn't pretty, and not a single Dodger has like a really sterling ERA. Dodgers pitching has been a little rough this spring training, but Casparius, he wowed me when he made his debut last year. He was one of those guys I really didn't know that much about. I don't pay the deepest, closest attention to mid-level minor league dudes who are kind of lower on the top 30 of the team in the pipeline or whatever. I got a lot of other things where I'm not paying attention to those guys. So this guy coming up and having the type of stuff he has, he has the ball moves both ways. It can stay up. It has good ride, mid to high 90s on the fastball, and that's going to play up in the bullpen. He's another guy who's also started a lot in his career, so he gives the team somebody who can maybe go 2 or 3 innings, which will help them as they're still building up, in the month of April, some of these guys. So you get him in the mix. Likely Dustin May going to end up in that bullpen as well, as long as he is able to stay healthy, which we know is a challenge. And then I wouldn't be shocked to see Landon Knack at that last spot, just because, as you mentioned, there are a lot of names, a lot of arms that are opening the season on the IL. And also, I forgot 2. So we're at 11. We're actually 11 pitchers that are on the 40 men that are going to open the season on the injured list.
Okay.
Yeah. You also know I'm bad at counting. So while you talk, I'll double count.
And you mentioned Dustin May. May still has a good shot to win that 5th starter spot. If that's the case, then maybe we're looking at Tony Gonsolin. And one of the things that maybe is a blessing in disguise here is early in the season, you are going to benefit from having more long reliever types in the bullpen. So if you do have, more of the Ben Casparius, Landon Knack, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, maybe Bobby Miller, those kind of guys in your bullpen, that, can kind of mitigate the fact that early in the season, you're going to have fewer 6 or 7 inning outings from your starters. They're going to be more the 5 inning stuff. You're going to need maybe more often that you're likely to need a reliever to go 2 innings or even 3 innings. Having more of those long reliever types in the bullpen early in the season. Obviously, we would love it if Michael Kopech and Evan Phillips were healthy, but you may trade the quantity right now for the quality that they, more quality from them, but, you might rather have a guy who can go 3 innings for you in a pinch than have Michael Kopech throwing 101 right now.
Yeah.
And it may end up that the whole season goes like this, because probably when Kopech and Phillips are back, maybe 98-year-old Kirby Yates might need a break at that point. There's going to be guys throughout. Relief pitching is a notoriously hard job on the arm. And so there's going to be guys needing breaks. And then eventually Bruce Gratterall will come back. There's going to be a lot of that back and forth, but we may see a situation where there is room for guys like, these long relievers like Knack and, Bobby Miller, whoever else in the bullpen. But also we might just see, they might just say, Bobby Miller, Dustin May, let's just see how hard you can throw when you're only going 1 inning.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've wanted to see out of Bobby Miller for a while. This could be the year, just purely because there aren't going to be a lot of starting innings available to him. And, this was something we were talking about early in the offseason when Walker Buehler was still on the table for this team. It's like Walker Buehler is somebody that's going to be looking for a starter's workload. And you can't really, as a Dodgers team, and at that point they hadn't even signed Sasaki, you can't promise a starter's workload to some of these dudes, and they can't do that with Miller. They won't be able to do that with Wroblewski, Dustin May, or Tony Gonsolin. I keep, in my mind, Tony Gonsolin's a lock just because he's proven it longer in his career than Dustin May has. But more good problems to have, I guess. I like what you're saying there. I'd rather have some of the high leverage 1 inning guys take a break in the first couple of weeks of the season. It's all good. We don't need you. This team doesn't need these guys to be healthy until August or September. They're not going to be out for that long, but they don't need to have these dudes when they have so many other options just kind of lying around who could pick up some innings for this team. And hopefully, in a best case scenario, keep starting pitching healthy as well by not having to have them go out there and go 5, 6, 7 innings, which we know starters don't do anymore.
Yeah. And in theoretically, it would be nice if the Dodgers head to October with none of their relievers having pitched more than 50, 55 innings this year. Spread those innings out among a ton of guys, or at least none of the high leverage guys who they do want to be guns ablazing in October. And then, then you kind of you can go into it with Michael Kopech. Hey, you know what, Michael Kopech, we gave you a pretty easy 6 months. You had a great season, didn't have to pitch a ton. Now we're going to lean on you, and we might need you 3 days in a row once in a while. So get out there and do it. And obviously there's a balance of, you want them to be used to throwing multiple days. I keep thinking back to 2017 when with both Kenley Jansen and Brandon Morrow late in the season, Dave Roberts started getting them up downs. He would bring them in with 2 outs in the 8th inning just for fun, get the last out of the 8th inning, then sit down and then pitch the 9th inning, just so that when the postseason rolled around, they're ready to do that. And, it almost worked out, except that other team cheated.
Bang, bang.
Yeah. But in the end, I feel like the Dodgers, nobody has totally figured out the October formula, but the Dodgers have been in October so many times that they got to be getting close to figuring some of this stuff out. And so I think they have a pretty strong game plan as far as keeping these guys rested, but also fresh, so that when October rolls around, they're ready to just come out there gung-ho.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So from Dodgers territory, humble plug for us. We're going to be heading out there next week, and we have a 2-on-1 interview with Dave Roberts at Camelback. And one of the things I do want to ask him is kind of the goal, or our narrative is looking back at that World Series from last year and some of his decisions, kind of nitpicking. So people can maybe, if somebody starts to get that inkling to say fire Dave Roberts in a stream somewhere, they could look back and they could understand what's going on through his head. But I also want to pick his brain about bullpen stuff, and like I like what you mentioned there, going back in time with Brandon Morrow, your Kenley Jansen's, and having less, we'll say fewer options than they have now, and kind of how that's altered his decision making, his in-game stuff, knowing that, I mean, we saw what happened last year. They had to go to Blake Treinen for 50 some odd pitches, whatever. The goal should be they don't need to do that, but understanding when you need to ride a dog and when ride a horse, whatever. I guess you shouldn't ride a dog, but when you need to ride a dude
horse and ride a cowboy, but I'm not sure where dogs fit in.
Bow wow. Well, we have the Catman in the mix or whatever. But anyways, I want to try to get something articulated out to Dave to see if we can get an idea, behind the brain of the manager and how a perfect scenario works with his bullpen and his decisions, and what we saw last year, how it can work out if you just kind of go with your gut as opposed to the game plan, which we've seen this team go with in the past.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited to hear that conversation you guys have with him. One last thing. We started with Roki Sasaki. I want to end with Roki Sasaki. Perfect. I am looking at a chart of his pitches from today, and his splitter obviously is ridiculous. Did you notice the spin rate on that splitter, Clint?
Back in my day, we used to call that a forkball.
The average spin rate on the splitters that Roki threw tonight, 518 RPM. Now, if you Google what is the spin rate of a knuckleball, Google will tell you the average spin rate for a knuckleball in college is between 795 and 989 RPM, which means Roki Sasaki's splitter spins less than a knuckleball.
It's just dancing in there. It's floating.
And you could see that. Like, you don't often see major league hitters swing and miss the ball by 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
And we saw that a couple times tonight. It is ridiculous. It's one of my, I've always been a sucker for change-up splitter pitches. And this is one of my new favorites. It's ridiculous. I love that it doesn't have the arm side movement. It just basically drops. It's just, I mean, Roger Craig would love that thing.
and one of the things they talked about, and I love Yang Yi in the chat saying Sasaki as advertised. One of the things they had mentioned too, it's like sometimes you don't know which way that changeup, that splitter is going to dart for Sasaki, which gives it's as the kids say, it's giving forkball, it's giving knuckleball, and it should be giving major league hitters a fit throughout the course of the 2025 season.
Yep. Last thing, Richard Flores is accusing me of ignoring him in the chat, so I will pop up his comment. Still mad at Dave Roberts for taking Rich Hill out too early in Game 2 versus the Astros. I will say Dave Roberts in that game handed a 1-run lead to Brandon Morrow and Kenley Jansen, the two best relievers in baseball that year. They didn't hold it. Be mad at the guys who gave up the runs. And BC says Anpul and Tyler Anderson too early in Game 4 in 2022. He mean, I'd say be mad at what's his name? Tight Pants. What's it? Tommy Kahnle, who came in and blew that game.
Man, Kahnle really loves going in and crapping the bed in the postseason, huh?
I texted Vince when Kahnle came in against the Dodgers in Game 5 this year, and I said Kahnle still owes us for 2022. Yep. And luckily, Kahnle did the job, loaded up the bases for him. You watch the recap, you forget it was Tommy Kahnle who started that in, because recap just goes straight to bases loaded and the 2 sack flies. But it was Tommy Kahnle who got that job done for us. So Tommy Kahnle has been a guest on this show. I like Tommy Kahnle, but you know what? I blame him more for Game 4 against the Padres. I blame Morrow and Kenley and maybe a little Yasiel Puig for Game 2 against the Astros. Players got to play. Managers can only do so much.
Rich Hill against the Red Sox, that one more so. Was that
he handed the ball to Dave Roberts? What's he supposed to do?
He wasn't going to challenge him, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, that'll do it for us for today. Thank you, Clint, for hanging out with me. Thank you all for being here with us. If you're live with us, we really appreciate. If you're watching or listening later, we appreciate you just as much. Don't let these live people bully you like that. We love all of our listeners and viewers. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now so that you can become an everydayer by watching or listening every weekday morning. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Obviously, check out All Dodgers with Clint Pasillas and Dodgers Territory with Clint and Alana Rizzo. Both of those are on the YouTubes and awesome sources for every Dodger fan. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. Clint is on Twitter at RealFRG. I am on Twitter at Snydog. All three of us have DMs open over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.